Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I want to look at the weekend of February the 15th and 16th, 2025. I also want to consider some aspects of American politics. We just had this full moon on Wednesday, on February the 12th, and I think this new moon in its own way was quite dramatic. I think that was the day in which Trump made his phone call to Putin, which has, of course, caused us a lot of excitement and concern in NATO. So I do think there are aspects of that new moon which do signify that phone call. There is also some confirmations, not just confirmations, we had swearings in. We had the swearing in of Tulsi Gabbard as National Intelligence Director. Have I got that right? Director of National Intelligence. Yes, that's right. And so she got sworn in, and also RFK got sworn in as Health Secretary. And I thought it would be an opportunity to look at the horoscopes of those two and to get some idea about how well they're going to fare. Tulsi Gabbard, she's got a really strong chart, and one wonders if she is really going to be able to handle it. Or rather, is she going to be able to put up with it? And Tulsi Gabbard has got to last for the next 4 years. I don't know what happens after Trump no longer becomes president, but she does have a powerful chart. That certainly is something I think we do need to look at. But before we look at American politics, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for the weekend of February the 15th and 16th, 2025. So here is the chart. That's Tulsi Gabbard's chart. We'll look at Tulsi Gabbard's chart in a moment. I was really interested by all her stuff in Aries, but anyway, that will be discussed a bit later in the video. Here is the chart for the weekend, set for midnight on Sunday, February the 16th. By the way, if you happen to like this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to indeed like it, and if you're not subscribed, I would be really, really over the moon if you were to subscribe. Anyway, so that is the chart for the weekend, and the weekend has the moon in Libra, or at least the moon goes into Libra at 11:45 on Saturday morning if you are in the UK. So that means that if you're in the Americas, the moon goes into Libra very early on Saturday, and you can basically take the view that the moon is in Libra all weekend long. And even in Europe, Australia, well, certainly by lunchtime on Saturday, the moon will be in Libra. If you are in Australia or New Zealand, then the moon is not going to go into Libra until Saturday evening, perhaps even late on Saturday evening. So if you're in Australia or New Zealand, then it's a weekend that Saturday is moon in Virgo, Sunday is moon in Libra. And as far as some of the main aspects are concerned, well, on Saturday we have two aspects involving Mars. Firstly, we have got Mars decile Jupiter. You can see Mars and Jupiter exactly 36 degrees apart. So many of us are going to feel that we would like to be more energetic than usual. It could be something very down to earth. We might feel that we need to take more exercise, Mars, Jupiter. And we might have an idea, even a fantasy, about being out there, taking exercise, getting fit. So that's one way of looking at Mars, Jupiter. It could be just about taking more action, being here, there, and everywhere, having a lot of energy. So some of us might have that idea, that impulse, that inner impulse to do more. And then the question is, are we going to actually succeed in seeing that impulse through? Additionally, on Saturday, we have a sesquiquadrate between Mercury and Mars. So there is Mercury at 3 Pisces, I think, making a sesquiquadrate to Mars. So Mercury and Mars are in 45-degree aspect. And so with Mercury and Mars in 45-degree aspect, we might feel that there are things that we have to say, and we're not going to want to shut up, even if we're not entirely sure where our words are going. And if we don't say anything, then we might feel tense. That's Mercury Mars. It's a very tense combination, and our thoughts could be very active. And if our thoughts aren't active, then other people's thoughts could be the ones that are creating waves. And so there is this mental energy, and it's nice to be able to say what's on our mind, but Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars might be about a little bit of anger, especially verbal anger. And then as we move into Sunday, the moon moves further into Leo, and moon makes an opposition to Venus, and then it makes a trine to Jupiter. And that trine between moon and Jupiter, probably towards the end of the weekend, is something I would regard as being fortunate. Moon trine Jupiter is an optimistic aspect. We feel good about things. We want to make things happen. We can make things happen, but we have to be positive and have to be optimistic. Again, you don't have to be positive or optimistic, but it certainly will help. And the last aspect of the weekend, right at the end of the weekend, is Moon square Mars, and that Moon square Mars kind of linked with Chiron. So you could say that the Moon is making an opposition to Chiron and making the square to Mars. But that is right at the end of the weekend, and it kind of depends what we're doing. And for many of us, we might not be picking up on it, but late on Sunday, don't feel that everything is just nice and quiet and everything will go according to plan. People can get annoyed about things. We can get annoyed about things. So that's the picture certainly set for New York. If we set the weekend chart for Sydney, Australia, then we can see that at midnight on Sunday, the moon is in Libra, but very, very early Libra. And that's just a reminder that if you are in Australia, the moon doesn't go into Libra until right at the end of Saturday. So there is a slightly different feel to the weekend if you are in Australia or New Zealand, and Saturday and Sunday could be very different days in terms of what you experience. And then there is the heliocentric chart. If we put put the sun at the center of the solar system, and just a reminder, we got Venus and Mars getting closer to each other. I think when we looked at the heliocentric chart on Friday, Venus and Mars were were 6 degrees apart. Now they're only 4 degrees apart. So we're starting to feel that Venus-Mars conjunction. And Venus-Mars conjunction is quite energetic, and it's about how we project ourselves. And it's not just how we project ourselves, it's about how governments, organizations project themselves. Because I do think that when you're looking at a heliocentric chart, you really need to look at whatever energies are around in a collective way, not just not just something personal. So on a personal level, you might say, oh, Venus-Mars conjunction, it's about charisma and attractiveness and sex appeal. And heliocentrically, that might be true as well. But you also have to consider organizations and governments and what is the governmental equivalent of sex appeal or trying to be attractive, trying to get people's attention. And so it might then be about propaganda as we move into next week. How can governments try to show themselves to be appealing? That can be hard work in the current climate, but governments always try. And aside from that, the Earth is still making a square to Uranus. It's moving apart, but it's within 1.5 degrees. So Earth square Uranus, that does help to sort of stir things up. And I think by and large that is pretty much it. I don't think there's much else to report. So yes, Chiron and Jupiter. Looks like this weekend there is a Chiron-Jupiter sextile, and that Chiron-Jupiter sextile is picked up a little bit by Saturn, Saturn semi-sextile Chiron. Jupiter still square Saturn, but Jupiter sextile Chiron, it's about a vision of how we can do things differently, and it's quite benign in its own way. It wants to do good. We don't know what the results of trying to do good is, but I think there is a general impulse to do good with Jupiter sextile Chiron. And on a personal level, perhaps we can sort of tune into this heliocentric Jupiter Chiron sextile. If in our own little parts of the world, doing good and not being afraid of what other people say, because doing good, it can often be unpopular. It can draw attention to ourselves, and it can actually at the same time be something quite rebellious, especially now that we've got the Earth square Uranus. Earth square Uranus, that can be rebellious. So consider what you can do this weekend, and don't worry too much about your reputation. Sometimes it's necessary to apparently damage one's reputation in order to make the world a better place. So let me now look at things from the perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for the weekend of February the 15th and 16th, 2025. Aries, the moon is out of Virgo. Oh, okay, it's not quite out of Virgo if you're in Australia or New Zealand, but overall, moon is in Libra, and with the moon moving into Libra, there is a change. With the moon in Virgo, Aries, there might have been a certain sense of obligation and things that you really felt you had to do. There was no choice. You didn't necessarily want to do it, but you did anyway. And now that the moon is moving into Libra, you feel better and things are more positive, more constructive, but you're also aware that other people can't entirely be ignored. Moon in Libra is in your opposite sign, and you have to take into account their needs. And the moon in Libra, when it moves into Libra, it does make a trine to Pluto. So with moon trine Pluto, getting on with people, being with people, can actually be exciting and maybe even a little bit transforming. I say a little bit transforming. It's that moon is trine Pluto, not square Pluto. But consider the possibility that you haven't got all the answers, and that gentle socializing on Saturday can have an impact, can leave you with questions which you feel do have to be answered, and they may change your approach to some extent. But with Moon in Libra, there is this question about how far you go. How far do you let other people have their say? I mean, you've got to give people a chance, and you've got to be prepared to compromise, but to what extent? And what I'm really thinking about in terms of contrast is the fact that Mercury is sesquiquadrate Mars. So, Mars is your ruler. Mercury is the planet of communication. And with that Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars, you have got a lot to say, especially on Saturday, but probably all weekend, actually. You do have a lot to say, and you are not going to just keep your opinions to yourself. At least you won't happily keep your opinions to yourself. Sometimes one does keep one's opinions to oneself, but one can feel quite miserable about it. So if something needs to be said, Aries, then you probably have no choice. You have to say it. And if you don't say it, there's going to be this tension, and that tension could actually be very disruptive. But the words you do say, the points you make, could upset people. It's absolutely possible. I mean, from your perspective, you're just telling people the truth. You tell people how you feel. Maybe you're of the opinion that if you tell people things as it is, that can help move things along. There's no point in guessing. There's no point in trying to sort of imagine what other people are thinking. Let's just be out with it, and that can really help move things along. And I think you're right that words can be powerful, and that words can be transforming, and words can actually be liberating. And the concept of liberation this weekend is quite important, and you do want to be free. And so it's important that you are able to define what that means. But you can see the contradiction there, because the moon is in Libra. Moon in Libra is about you having to take into account other people. That's what it is. But to what extent? When you really put a high premium on your freedom. And one way of finding your freedom is to say what's on your mind. Because if you say what's on your mind, and there are no frills, you don't make an effort to be nice, you just say it as it is, what will happen? It may well be that everything changes, and you could upset someone, but a relationship can change. People might get out of your way, and something might be revealed, and that just clears the air. And clearing the air could matter. And clearing the air might mean a disagreement or a showdown, but it might be a case where it's something that just does have to happen. And as you move through the weekend, as the moon gathers strength through Libra, gathers strength. I'm not quite sure if that's the right word to say, gathers strength. It becomes more firm in its position in Libra, and it is actually heading towards a via combustor. And, by the end of a weekend, certainly in the Americas, the moon will be in a via combustor. That part of the sky between between 15 degrees Scorpio, between 15 degrees Libra and 15 degrees Scorpio, where things can just happen. The unexpected can happen. And then right at the end of a weekend, the moon makes that square to Mars, and the moon could be in a Via Combustor, certainly if you're in the Americas on Sunday evening. And that moon square Mars could be difficult. It could be actually quite explosive, because it's not just that the moon is square Mars. We have Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars, and so the moon is picking up on that sesquiquadrate. And so moon square Mars might mean that the weekend ends on quite a stressful note. And that's your choice. I mean, if you were to say nothing or do nothing, then maybe you could avoid a confrontation and you keep your thoughts to yourself. But I'm not sure, Aries, if you're really going to want to keep your thoughts to yourself. And you could say that over the weekend, it might be important not to allow things to build up. Because, when you allow things to build up, when they do finally express themselves, it can be explosive. But if you sort of express things as they come to mind and you don't allow things to build up, that might be the right approach, because it's going to be less likely to cause a shock, and you don't want to be the one who causes a shock. But Aries, you have to get the balance right. And I should emphasize that your freedom and your self-expression really do matter over the course of this weekend. Taurus, it's a weekend when you possibly feel that you want to do things in your own way, at your own pace, and you have ideas about the way things should be accomplished, and you probably don't want too much interference. Well, unless everyone is going to do things your way, and I think you'd like things to do things your way, and you have a certain vision of harmony, the way you'd like things to happen, the way you'd like things to unfold, and you won't take kindly to other people having their own ideas, about what you should do. And so you probably want to be as independent as possible, and not feel that you're trying to follow another person's schedule. So Taurus, do look after yourself. Do protect your independence. That independence might at times be undermined. Certain people are quite strident. They have things on their mind. There are things they want to talk about. There are things they're going to want to tell you, and this means that your interactions with other people, could be powerful. I mean, they're certainly vibrant, but you might find it somewhat unwelcome. This is not what you want. And this means, Taurus, that perhaps you should be prepared to give as good as you get. Do look after your own interests, and always be prepared to state your interests. Because if you're in a situation where other people are stating their interests and you don't state your interests, then other people's interests and other people's views might predominate. And then, Taurus, you're just going to get annoyed, and you might feel a sense of powerlessness, and that would be unnecessary. So, Taurus, make sure you are in control. And when you think about the weekend, ask yourself how you would like the weekend to pan out. What you'd like to be doing on Saturday, what you'd like to be doing on Sunday, how you are going to be, dividing up your time, and just follow the plan. And if you see that plan being disrupted, maybe you then just have to take action in order to make sure that things are made whole, because there are disintegrating forces out there. But I do believe, Taurus, that you should be able. I do believe that you should be able to resist them. And also, Taurus, there is an opposition between the Moon and Venus, because the Moon is in Libra, Venus is in Aries, and they're in opposition aspect, certainly in opposite signs. And that Moon-Venus opposition can be a little bit overindulgent. You can overdo something. And you could overdo anything. I mean, you could overdo things in terms of eating, drinking, exercise, diet. You can go both ways. It's about perhaps being immoderate. Moderation is in the middle. If you go to an extreme by consuming too much of something, or in certain cases consuming too little of something, if you go to extremes, you're messing yourself up. And the Moon opposition Venus might encourage you to go to extremes in such a way that you could undermine your health and well-being. I mean, I don't want to over-dramatize it. Just remember, I'm not giving medical advice here, but try to be moderate in terms of your behavior and your consumption, whatever you're consuming and whatever you're doing, exercise, all that kind of stuff. Be moderate, be reasonable, and just don't take things to extremes, because if you do take things to extremes, then I think there's a chance that you will undermine yourself. So that is a real possibility, Taurus. So if you like, find the middle path and don't stray off it. And in terms of other people and relationships, be ready for anything. Especially because Mercury is making a sesquiquadrate to Mars. Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars might represent a person who is very energetic and very verbal and perhaps a little bit angry, and this person could be quite irritating, and they might want a lot of your attention, or even if they don't want your attention, you might find yourself having to give them your attention. And if someone is getting tense, then you might start feeling tense yourself. So, make sure that you respect your need for harmony. And so harmony is not just about following the middle path in terms of your consumption and diet and exercise. It's also making sure that you have a harmonious social environment. You want to have an environment which is peaceful, where you're not having to deal with other people's pressure and other people's inner problems. And so that is something you should seek out, and just make sure that the weekend works according to your plans and not according to anyone else's plans. Gemini, the moon is moving into Libra, and moon in Libra, that's a nice place for the moon if you're in Gemini. The moon in Libra is about you, and it's about you doing what you want to do, and understanding that you are special in your own way. I mean, every Gemini is special, aren't they? I mean, I would say that, having my sun in Gemini. But every Gemini is special, and that's something that you need to respect. And if there's something you want to do of an inspirational or recreational nature, then just do it. It doesn't have to be done in a way that is disruptive. You just have to get on with it, and just be ready to express yourself, without having to look over your shoulder. And also the moon in Libra is making a trine to Gemini, and trine to Jupiter in Gemini. It is making a trine to the sign Gemini, but specifically it's making a trine to Jupiter in Gemini. And that Moon Jupiter trine is very fortunate. Jupiter is in your sign. The condition of Jupiter is so much improved now. I know Jupiter in Gemini is in its detriment, but Mercury is now in Pisces, and Mercury is in mutual reception with Jupiter, and now you've got Moon trine Jupiter. And so Gemini, I'm hoping that you feel that you're really getting your power back. I mean, you might have felt to some extent you'd lost your power a little bit over the last month or two, but you just may feel you are getting it back, that you're now realigning, and with this moon trine Jupiter. In fact, you could argue that you've got a grand trine, because the moon when it moves into Libra, it makes a trine to Pluto, and then it moves on to make a trine to Jupiter. So at some stage the moon is going to be on the Jupiter-Pluto midpoint in Libra, and that really is powerful. Moon on a Jupiter-Pluto midpoint. I mean, that's probably more Saturday than Sunday, but I think you can conceive of it as being the whole weekend. And with the moon in this position and this kind of grand trine, with this sort of grand trine feel, Gemini, you just have a chance to make things better and do things better, and you shouldn't be satisfied with the way things are. And so if you're doing something that is really important to you, that is a fundamental part of your self-expression, then there is a way to do it even better, to sort of escalate it to new levels. And that might mean that you shouldn't be worrying too much about whatever else is going on around you. Do things according to your rules, your schedule, your plans. You don't have to allow anyone else to get in your way. Yet Mercury is making a sesquiquadrate to Mars, and this Mercury-Mars sesquiquadrate could be about irritation. And it shouldn't be about irritation. It should not be an irritating weekend. If you're doing what you feel happy about, if you're doing what you feel comfortable with, then why should there be any irritation? It just would seem to be completely unnecessary. And do what you feel is right, and there's no need to get annoyed. But you might get annoyed, and it might just be that there are just some small details that you have to engage with, and I suppose it kind of depends what you're planning on doing this weekend. And if, for example, you are working over the weekend, or you're doing something important that isn't entirely of your choosing, you perhaps have a pre-existing obligation, or you're going to a party that you don't want to go to, or that you kind of have to go to, something you feel that you have to do it, but you just don't want to do it, and it's annoying, and you have a particular attitude. I'll give you an example. Well, actually, I'm doing this recording on a Friday, and so I'm saying it's a weekend, but I'm doing this recording on a Friday. And what's really annoying me at the moment is I have to go to the dentist. I feel that I feel it was really imposed upon me, and the dentist called me up and said, I've got an appointment to get my teeth cleaned. I'm sure there's all sorts of other things wrong with my teeth, but I have this appointment to but was imposed upon me. I didn't ring them up asking for them to have my teeth cleaned. They rang me up, and I sort of said, okay, that's okay, fine. And then, as I moved into today, I realized it's completely inconvenient. I do not want to go to the dentist, and it just doesn't feel right. And so I tried to cancel the appointment, but I'd have to pay $50 as a fine or whatever. And that just really annoys me. I do not want to go to the dentist, and it may feel a bit like that this weekend. And I feel I want to be sort of, disruptive about it, and I don't want to go. And maybe I'm already picking up on the fact that Mercury is sesquiquadrate Mars, even though I'm doing this recording on a Friday. But it might feel like that. So if you've got that kind of appointment that's being imposed upon you, then try to get out of it if you can. I mean, okay, it might be an important point. If you I'm not saying you should skip a medical appointment, but if it's some social appointment, do try to get out of it. Because if you don't want to be there, you're just going to cause trouble, and you'll be very willful about it, and that is when the Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars could start to kick in, and you just might say things, or unconsciously you're going to try to not rock the boat, but unconsciously you're just annoyed. You would be annoyed. And so that means, Gemini, you really do have to have as much control as possible this weekend. You have to do things your way. And don't be afraid of cancelling things, because if you're doing something you don't want to do over the weekend, you could be horrible, really horrible. You might not even mean to be horrible, but you could be horrible anyway. So it might be in everyone's best interest, Gemini, if this weekend you err on the side of selfishness right from the beginning. Cancer. It's a weekend when you probably feel that you want to do things your way, and you don't really want to have to consider what other people are doing, and you don't want to exert yourself, more than you have to, and it may be just a case of sort of home sweet home. That's what you want, home sweet home. And that's especially the case if you're in the Americas and Europe. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, it might be a somewhat different picture, because on Saturday the moon is moving through Virgo, Australia, New Zealand time, and the moon doesn't really move into Libra until Sunday. But if you're in Europe or the Americas, moon is in Libra all weekend, so there is a slight difference there. But overall, there is a sense in which you want to bring things home, and you want to focus on the home, and you don't want to be doing things which require too much effort. And that ideally should be the way it is. But the moon in Libra does start making a square to Mars, and this moon Mars square, but gets stronger as the weekend progresses. I mean, this moon Mars square is exact late on Sunday, even into Monday, but you can feel the build up. And this moon square Mars makes you feel that you really want to dig your heels in and look after yourself and your interests, and that's what matters as far as you're concerned. And if people get in your way or intrude on your space, I think you're going to be very good at defending yourself. And Mars is in Cancer, and you know how to look after yourself. And not just that, but we have Mercury making a sesquiquadrate to Mars. And with that Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars Cancer, I think you could be quite verbal. You'll be quite able to tell people, what is on your mind, what you're thinking, and what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And yeah, if you're angry, Cancer, then I think that you'll be very good at expressing that anger. At least that's one way in which the Mercury Mars sesquiquadrate could work. We could say, though, that is, if you like, the lower way in which the Mercury Mars square could work, if we see it at its base level. There are other ways of looking at that Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars. I mean, so far when I've been discussing this Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars, I've seen it in a fairly negative light, not just for you, but for other signs. But we could perhaps see sort of a higher expression of Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars, and that higher expression, Cancer, would be about putting your mental and inspirational energy into finding something that is beyond yourself. You should not be satisfied with what you know. You could know more. You could experience more. You could be open to new information which may allow you to see things in a completely different way. And so Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars could be about some kind of quest, you wanting to really understand something, putting huge amounts of energy into it. That would be Mars in Cancer. Mars in your sign, something you regard as important, you give it everything you've got, and you really try to get to the bottom of something. And then at some stage there is a sense of knowledge, and you get it. And so that Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars could be very inspiring, but it's a kind of angry inspiration. You're really going for something, and you finally get it. You get the answers you're looking for. And the moon, I've talked about the moon being in Libra. The moon in Libra makes a trine to Jupiter, and this trine with Jupiter is fortunate. I mean, no doubt about it. It's an easy aspect, and the moon, of course, has a special relationship with you because the moon is your ruler. And so you could literally say moon trine Jupiter makes you lucky. But where is that luck? That luck is not immediate. It's not out there in the open. That's not where the luck is. You don't have to go anywhere to find your luck. The luck is all around you, and it can be discovered in strange places. And I don't think you need any help. And I know that this moon trine Jupiter does actually happen quite often. And if you've got a good memory, as many Cancerians do have good memories, if you have a good memory, you'll probably remember that I've talked about moon trine Jupiter before in similar terms. It is about being lucky, but finding that luck in your own way. But this time round, Jupiter is actually in quite a strong position, a stronger position than it was in the last time the moon was trine Jupiter, and that is because Jupiter is now in mutual reception to Mercury. And so have moon trine Jupiter with this mutual reception, Jupiter Mercury mutual reception, indicates that if it is more lucky than usual, you have a greater chance now to get the full benefits of that moon trine Jupiter, and because Mercury is sesquiquadrate Jupiter. Mercury is sesquiquadrate Jupiter. Sorry, not sesquiquadrate. I mean mutual reception, because Mercury and Jupiter are in mutual reception. Then it's like something out there wants you to be lucky, wants some aspect of your life to work, but not on any terms, perhaps on its terms. And maybe it's just about you doing something that you're supposed to do, something that is completely natural. You're not trying to you're not trying to behave in a particular way. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're just doing it your way, and you're taking what's available and you're using it in a way that is free and spontaneous. And in that way, the universe will smile on you, and you'll get the luck you deserve. Leo, it's probably a fairly pleasant weekend. I mean, more than pleasant. It is going to be an interesting weekend, and there's going to be plenty to excite you, and you'll see new opportunities. And so, you don't have to feel that things have to go in a particular way. If you want something to happen, if you want something different to happen, then there's no reason why it can't happen. And your ability to be friendly and gregarious is going to be good. So people are going to like you, and the things you say will be relatively harmonious. After all, the moon is in Libra, and it's very nice that the moon is in Libra, and the moon is moon's trine Pluto, and that trine between the moon and Pluto is going to be useful in terms of allowing you to get other people's attention, and the things you do will seem impressive, and you just have to just be very natural about it. And it's not a time to be causing trouble. You don't have to cause trouble. Again, you can just be yourself, and if you are yourself and you follow your heart, then everything should work out fine. And the moon is making a trine to Jupiter. So with the moon trine Jupiter, that really does give a boost to your social skills. So in any sort of social situation, you're going to be very, very effective. Now, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, it's true that the moon doesn't go into Leo until late on Saturday. But if you are if you're up late on Saturday and perhaps into Sunday, you'll start to feel the moon moving into Leo. You'll feel the moon making that trine to Pluto. So that's if you're in Australia or New Zealand. But in other places, I think that moon trine Pluto is going to feel very clear, very obvious, and it's just will feel that you're making an impact, and people are listening to you, and then the moon makes a trine to Jupiter, as I've said. So we've got moon trine Pluto. So we kind of got a grand trine. So moon makes a trine to Pluto, then the moon makes a trine to Jupiter, and it's all about other people, how you express yourself, how you communicate, how you show your enthusiasm, and so it all comes together, and just people feel the sort of the happy, sunny side of the Leo personality that can all be demonstrated. And at the same time, you're very capable of being original. The sun is still, where's the sun gone? The sun is, the sun at 27 Aquarius. The sun is still kind of making a square aspect to Uranus, and it's still relatively close to Mercury, but I mean, it's 5 degrees apart. So the sun, your ruler, is still aspected to an extent. And there is something about you that is interesting, and you can change things through your ideas because you are original, and that originality is very obvious. And you shouldn't be afraid to be original. People want originality, and originality starts with you, and it starts with your ideas, and having ideas which you really should be discussing, because people want to hear about it. People want to know that things are changing, that things are different, that things are improving. And I know there is this question about whether or not things are improving. I do think things are improving. Jupiter is in mutual reception with Mercury. Jupiter, the planet of expansion, the planet of optimism, is now in mutual reception to Mercury. So there is a general atmosphere where people are ready to think that things are improving. And you, Leo, can be the person to show them that, yeah, things really are getting better. And you can be in the forefront, of this change. And yeah, you shouldn't be afraid of, saying, what is on your mind, and being inspiring and being encouraging. And also, you're going to be good at listening. I mean, you're not going to want to spend all your weekend listening. I mean, there are limits to how much you can listen, but you can listen enough to understand what people want, and to an extent, you're going to be able to give it to them. But of course, you're going to be able to give it to them on your terms. I mean, that matters, and you don't have to worry too much about other people's influence. And overall this weekend, I think that you are a free spirit, and people want a free spirit, and in that sense, you are setting a very good example. Virgo, the moon is now in Libra, and moon in Libra from a Virgo perspective can be of financial significance. And so it's possible that over the weekend, financial issues come to the fore. And if you're in Australia or New Zealand, okay, the moon won't move into Libra until Sunday, or very late on or rather late on Saturday. So yeah, there is this financial there is a financial element here. I mean, it's not absolutely going to happen. If money is of no interest to you, you don't want to be bothered with money, then probably you don't have to be bothered with money. But don't ignore the financial dimension. And I don't mean that in a sense of it, being a problem necessarily. The moon does make a trine to Jupiter, and that trine to Jupiter is really quite a good aspect. And it's possible, actually, Virgo, that the moon trine Jupiter could actually be financially useful. And there may be things you can do over the weekend, especially on Sunday, which can really improve your financial prospects, or you may reach some conclusions about money. And if you actually put these conclusions into action, and you really do something, then good luck might be coming your way. So if money is available, conceivably available, then this weekend you should really try and get hold of it, or try to put yourself in a position where you can get hold of it. Or it may be some kind of agreement that you can have which can help you financially, or just might be plain inspiration. You see that something is possible. And it's not just about money this weekend. I mean, don't worry, there are other things going on. Mercury is your ruler. Mercury is, remember, now Mercury is sesquiquadrate. Sorry, Mercury, well, it is sesquiquadrate Mars, but Mercury is also in mutual reception to Jupiter. And this is something quite recent. I mean, on Friday we had Mercury moving into Pisces, and I really do think that this Mercury moving into Pisces can be useful in terms of relationships. It should help you and other people get on with one another. And so, as it's a weekend, perhaps you've got more time to give to the important people in your life with this mutual reception between Mercury and Jupiter. It is an opportunity to make relationships stronger, and to see what you and other people have in common. And I'm talking about relationships of all kinds. Whatever it is, it may be a brief relationship, but it may be a brief relationship that is all about the achievement of one particular goal, and once that goal is achieved, the relationship is not necessary anymore. But whatever it is, you can certainly benefit from other people's company, and this Moon Jupiter trine we have, is kind of more of the same. Yes, you can benefit from other people's company, and you can benefit, yes, in a material way. I mean, you can also benefit in an emotional way, but overall, it can be a very productive weekend. What you don't want to do, though, is get hung up on a sesquiquadrate between Mercury and Mars. Now, this Mercury-Mars sesquiquadrate is potentially very verbal. Mercury, your ruler, being aspected by Mars, by sesquiquadrate. Mercury is your ruling planet, and it's also the planet of communication. And there is this question of how you communicate. And, on a positive note, Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars could be healthy communication, talking about lots of different things, animated conversation with friends. That might be a way to see Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars. But another way of looking at Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars is annoyance. Something annoying you, and you noticing things that annoy you. And once you start noticing things that annoy you, you want to talk about them, you want to discuss them, you want the situation to be resolved. And once you start, it may be difficult to stop. And once you're in a position where you're pointing things out, when you're showing your annoyance, it may start to snowball. So be a little careful with that Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars, because it could get out of control, and something you say, just one thing you say, could cause a lot of damage. So don't say something just for the sake of it, and don't lash out. You could do that, Virgo. You could lash out verbally, and once you've said those words, it might be very difficult to put them back. And so try to think things through, and don't feel that you always have to express everything you think. And there's also the possibility that you have misunderstood something, and you might jump to conclusions. But these things you might get upset about, concerned about, these are trivialities. And it's not a weekend for trivialities. It's a weekend for moving above and beyond things. And if we look at this Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars in the most positive way, Mercury is you, and Mars is how you want to express yourself, how you want to assert yourself. And it's not about scoring points. It's about finding yourself, and it's about finding a sense of freedom. And if you push things in the right direction, you might actually realize that something you thought was really holding you back. Maybe it's a person, but something that you really thought was a problem. If you actually look at it from a different view, there might be a moment this weekend when you actually see that it's actually nothing to worry about, that it might even be an opportunity. And there may be a transformation of perception, and a transformation that is entirely positive, that you could actually see that something that you thought was a problem is actually nothing. Or better still, is actually a real plus in your life. And it is a time, Virgo, when you need to sort of move beyond those trivialities and really try to be as positive as possible, not just for your own sake, but also for other people's sake as well. Libra. The moon is starting to move into your sign. It might not move into your sign until very late on Saturday if you're in Australia or New Zealand, but it is definitely getting there. And with the moon in Libra, you're feeling sort of that things are happening, that things are moving your way, and you feel a sense of connection. And one reason for this sense of connection is that the moon in Libra is making a trine to Jupiter in Gemini, and that moon Jupiter trine really is lucky, and it also is quite inspiring. And you see things you see things in a new way, and you start to be aware of possibilities that you weren't aware of before. And so don't limit yourself this weekend, and don't get tied to just one way of thinking. And it's not just because the moon is trine Jupiter. The moon is actually trine Pluto as well. So you could say you've got a grand trine in air signs. The moon moves into Libra, makes a trine to Pluto, then it makes a trine to Jupiter. Moon does also make an opposition to Venus. So the moon is making a lot of important aspects, and things can flow very easily and quickly without you having to feel pressured. Though, with that moon opposition Venus, could say something about relationships. Remember, Venus is in Aries at the moment. So Venus is in Aries. Aries is of course your opposite sign. And so, with Venus in Aries, there are going to be times when you will have to consider things from other people's point of view. I mean, that's something about. I mean, Venus has been in Aries for some time, but moon in Libra opposition Aries is just a reminder that you do have to consider someone else. You might not fully want to consider them, but don't over dramatize it. If you spend a little bit of time trying to work out what someone wants, you can give it to them, and you're not really giving anything away. And what fundamentally matters is that moon trine Jupiter, and the fact that if you are a little bit adventurous and you try something that you maybe haven't done before, it doesn't have to be dangerous, I'm not suggesting that, but you do something differently, and you realize that there's a new possibility here, and something you hadn't been aware of before, and that might make you think about the future and what you are doing. It's very easy to get set in one's ways, but with moon trine Jupiter, especially now that Jupiter is in a much stronger position than it used to be, Jupiter is in mutual reception with Mercury, you may realize that you actually want to change some of the routines and patterns of your life. They may have been working fine in the past, but they could be working better. And so with with this moon trine Jupiter, you may be thinking about the future, and you may be thinking about what you're doing. It may have a relationship with your career or your business, if that's relevant. And I know it's a weekend, but it might be a note for the new week. Of course, you might be working over the weekend, but moon trine Jupiter does make you aware of new possibilities, and these possibilities can be made to happen. They are very real, and it's just very important that you don't limit yourself. There's absolutely no need to limit yourself, and sure, you have to take into account what other people want, but only up to a point. You can, with this moon in Libra trine Jupiter, you can do something that you do it for you, and you don't necessarily have to do it for other people. But really, if you are acting in a free and spontaneous way, then it won't just be you benefiting; it will be other people benefiting as well. So overall, Libra, it looks like being a constructive weekend, but also it's a weekend that allows you to tune into something else. You don't have to be satisfied with the way things were in the past. You can reach out for something new. Scorpio, the main aspect this weekend is a sesquiquadrate between Mercury and Mars. We also have a decile between Mars and Jupiter. And these aspects are asking you to be constructive. You use whatever energy you have in a positive way, and don't be negative about it, and don't create problems where no problems exist. And with Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars, there is some possibility that you go sort of rushing around here, there, and everywhere. It's like you're looking for something, you're thinking about something, and it's difficult to stay in one place. And there is a certain agitation to this aspect. Nowhere is entirely perfect. At least that's how it might feel. So you do have to keep moving, looking for perfection. But of course, perfection is something that is very difficult to find. And with this aspect, you probably need to make sure that you just don't exaggerate things, that you don't make yourself angry about nothing. And that's how the Mercury Mars sesquiquadrate could work. But also, you might be annoyed by the universe's challenges. The universe wants you to do things. The universe wants you to do things which are in keeping with your destiny and maybe your God-given talents. That's what the universe wants you to do. And if you're not doing it, then the universe will give you reminders, and you won't like those reminders. So if you do find yourself getting annoyed over the weekend, the reason you might be getting annoyed is because you're turning away from something that you're supposed to be doing. And if you actually do start doing it, if you start putting your energy into the right things, into the things that are just made for you, then there'll be a greater sense of harmony, and you'll start to feel better about yourself. And Mars, by the way, is also making a decile to Jupiter, and Mars decile Jupiter is about the struggle to use your power and your energy to make it all happen. It all starts as a fantasy. It starts as a possibility. You have this will to make things happen, to be dynamic. You have that will, but is that will actually going to be projected out there into the world? And that's something you need to do. And if you're not doing it, then that's just going to add to the frustration. You just feel that there's something you're supposed to be doing and you're not doing it, and you might imagine that people are getting in your way, and you might create stories about it, and you tell yourself these stories, and these stories sound good, and it's not your fault, but really you can make it happen, and there's no real excuse for it not to happen. One excuse you might bring up is that someone's getting in your way, people are getting in your way. The moon is opposition Venus, and moon in Libra opposition Venus. You could say, well, Venus represents other people. The opposition is about stress. The moon is about your emotional balance, and other people are upsetting your balance. They're stopping you doing anything. But that is just an excuse. And if you create your own life, create your own schedule, do things your way, if you just ignore the outside world to an extent, you don't have to completely ignore the outside world, but if you just do things your way, and you make sure that everything is clear, then there is no excuse. Now, what some Scorpios might do, or at least might be tempted to do, is to give in to other people's pressure. So the pressure might be very gentle. Someone suggests you do something, and you just do it. You allow yourself to go somewhere. You allow yourself to be distracted. You allow yourself to spend too long on the phone, whatever it is. That is a possibility. And in that case, you would then have a very good reason to say, well, I wasn't able to do anything this weekend, and I felt really angry because other people were taking up so much of my time. But actually, it's voluntary. And so ideally, Scorpio, you will just look after yourself, put yourself first, put your creative self-expression first, and then everything will flow. And that Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars that I talked about can actually be a real plus. It can really help you push your energy into the things that matter to you. Sagittarius, we kind of have a grand trine in air, sort of. The moon is in Libra, and it's making a trine to Pluto, and it's also making a trine to Jupiter. And so, grand trines are about energy flowing easily and quickly. And from a Sagittarian viewpoint, this means that you can enjoy things. You can enjoy other people's company. You can enjoy being with people. You can also enjoy your own company and doing the things that are important to you. But everything is flowing. And ideally you will gravitate towards the things that help things move, that make you feel happy and inspired, and that may reflect, for example, your choice of friends, who you spend time with. There are some people you'd like to spend time with. There are other people you don't want to spend so much time with them. But the choice is yours, and you're in a position where you can make things happen without really any effort at all. And that moon trine Jupiter is especially fortunate. And Jupiter's your ruler, and moon trine Jupiter can really allow you to benefit from being with the right people. And so if for any parties or other kinds of gatherings going on over the weekend, probably in most cases you should go and see what's happening and see how you can enjoy yourself. I won't say see how you can benefit, because it's not really about benefit in terms of some tangible advantage. You're not trying to take advantage of anything. You don't really have to look after your own interests, but you are someone, you can make things happen. And I think in most cases, people will appreciate your company. Having said that, Sagittarius, there is a serious side to you this weekend. You can be sort of light and free, but if some issue comes up that's important, that needs your concentration, you can do it. You can really concentrate on certain things, in a very intense and efficient way. So you hit an issue, someone else hits an issue, you will immediately be able to drop everything, focus on this one thing that needs attention, and probably be able to sort it out very, very quickly. And probably the reason you'll be able to sort it out is because you just see how the whole thing works. You don't have to spend too much time thinking about it. It's just obvious. And that means that you can be a little bit of a troubleshooter. If anyone's got a problem, you're the person to fix it. But it's the kind of problem that can be fixed with the mind. You see solutions and connections that just other people completely miss. So that might give you a certain amount of responsibility. You need to be around for other people because you can be very helpful. And you're capable of being realistic. Yeah, there might be free flow, but you're not going to drift off on fantasy. And if you need to tell someone something in a very sort of serious, no-nonsense way, that is something you can do. But you're not going to do it just for the sake of it, to make people feel bad. It's just a capacity that you will have very naturally. Now, in terms of relationships, Mercury is making a sesquiquadrate to Mars, and this sesquiquadrate may give you information about how people are feeling, how some people are feeling. And some people are agitated, and it may link to what I was just saying about you being able to sort out other people's problems. So if it may just be that someone is agitated because they can't work something out, they can't resolve something, and you in some respects can deal with their agitation by coming up with solutions. And it just might be a good idea to be aware of people's agitation, so listen to what they say. And it is a case where the words people say are revealing so much, and that's especially the case if people are talking quickly, and you can feel a tinge of anger in what they're saying. So you pick that up, and you realize what's going on. And in most cases, it's a situation where you can resolve it, and you can make people feel better. Though Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars can be a situation where just some people are just difficult. They want to create arguments out of nothing, in which case you can sidestep the issue. You can do it very easily, especially with that Moon trine Jupiter. Moon trine Jupiter, it is a great aspect, and that Moon trine Jupiter allows you to move on. And if people won't allow you to do some healing, then that's their problem. Talking about healing, when we looked at the heliocentric picture, Jupiter was exactly sextile Chiron, and I know that if you look at the geocentric chart, you won't see a sextile between Jupiter and Chiron, but heliocentrically there is that Jupiter Chiron sextile, and it's very exact. And that may say something about you this weekend, and it perhaps is about you being able to make things better for people. You can do it if you're given the chance. Capricorn. Capricorn, it may be the weekend, but you do feel that there are certain things that just need to be done. You know they need to be done, and you know that it won't wait, or at least you feel that it won't wait. And so that means, Capricorn, that you might feel that you actually have to have quite a busy weekend. And that means a busy weekend, concentrating on the things that matter to you. And it is optional. You don't have to have a busy weekend. If you do nothing this weekend, that's absolutely fine. But if you really concentrate on the things that matter to you, and you're ambitious, but also imaginative. Ambition and imagination do have to walk hand in hand. If you can do that, then this weekend you may just really feel that you're just moving in the right direction. And perhaps it's made easier by the fact that it is the weekend. When it's a weekend, there isn't so much pressure, and you're not expected necessarily to do anything. In most cases, of course, that does depend on your particular situation, but you're not expected to do anything. And because you don't have that pressure, you can actually do things your own way and develop your own ideas. Because I think some of your ideas are going to be really good, and also there's a sense in which you can quietly prepare. Preparation could be very useful, but it's easy preparation. It's the kind of preparation that is described by a trine aspect between the moon and Jupiter. So moon and Jupiter is just about things just moving very quickly, very well. And the moon isn't just trine Jupiter, by the way. The moon is also trine Pluto. And so this grand trine involving moon, Pluto and Jupiter, it might be a somewhat wide grand trine, but there will be a point over the weekend when the moon is on a Jupiter-Pluto midpoint, allows you to really improve things across the board. And if anything is not working well or hasn't been working well, then over the weekend you can quickly resolve the problem. And in the process, you won't upset people. You won't come over as being a very focused, self-obsessed kind of Capricorn. No, you'll just come over as being someone who is pleasant and reasonable, and it just may be that a lot of people just won't notice what you're doing, and that's the way you want it. And that means this weekend you can be productive, and you can actually be productive in a social sense as well, because there's nothing about you that creates problems. There's nothing about you that raises other people's hackles. It's all very natural, and your enthusiasm and your calm but positive approach is really going to help other people to relax, and they're going to trust you. And because you're going to be trusted, you can make even more progress. You're not seen as a threat. You're not seen as a rival. And so Capricorn, it just looks like being a great weekend, and I don't think I want to spoil it by saying anything more. Aquarius, we have a grand trine in air signs. The moon is moving into Libra, and when it moves into Libra, it makes a trine to Pluto, and then it moves on, and then it makes a trine to Jupiter in Gemini. So with this grand trine in air signs, Aquarius, I do think that things should really move pretty well for you. there isn't much in the way of resistance. And so, if there's anything you want to do this weekend, probably just go and do it. I just don't think you'll run into too much opposition. And at the same time, you'll be able to just move from one thing to another with relative ease. And if you think about that moon trine Pluto, moon trine Pluto is about your ability to create change. And one thinks of creating change as being something dramatic, even traumatic, but this moon trine Pluto, it's easy. If you want things to change, you can make them change, and there's not going to be any fuss. People won't complain, and then the moon, having made that trine to Jupiter, it moves to a trine to Jupiter. Sorry, having made that trine to Pluto, it makes a trine to Jupiter, and that trine to Jupiter is just going to make you feel comfortable, and you're going to have this idea that you are who you are, and you don't have to apologize. But there's no need to think that you've got all the answers. With the moon moving through Libra, making a trine to Jupiter, you can learn more. You can learn more about yourself. You can learn more about what is possible. And you might start the weekend thinking that you've got a certain amount of possibilities, a certain amount of choices. And as the weekend progresses, you become aware that you've actually got more choices than you realize. And you can really create things how you want to create them. That is a fortunate situation. And this also applies to your social life. In a social sense, there's just something about you that is really very attractive, and people want to listen to you, and they don't just want to listen to you. It's not just about listening. It's also just about wanting to be with you, and they want to share what you have, and they want to share perhaps that inspiration that you can bring to bear. And this is perhaps a sign that things are getting better. In general, it's not just about you being an Aquarius. I think overall things are improving. There are signs of improvement, and you are a representative of these times of improvement. And so that might actually give you a certain amount of responsibility to really demonstrate that things are changing, and things are changing for the better. And that means, from your perspective, you have to be as positive as possible, but not being positive just in some chaotic fantasy kind of way. You understand that you can't be positive just for the sake of it. You have to be positive and optimistic on the basis of actual facts, on actual reality. And with this grand trine in air, Aquarius, you actually have the opportunity to change the situation, so that things actually are moving, that there really are possibilities. But these are possibilities that you really can make it happen, and you in a way, Aquarius, you are a kind of sort of representative of the future. And one thing I should point out over the weekend, the sun is now at 27 Aquarius, and it's you've got 2 days left of the sun being in your sign. The Aquarius season is really coming to an end now, and so when the sun moves into Pisces when does the sun move into Pisces? The sun moves into Pisces, I think, on the 18th. So the sun moves into Pisces on Tuesday. I mean, I think I've already told you it moves into Pisces on Tuesday. But just I want to make that point clear. And in those last couple of days when the sun is still in Aquarius, there just might be things you need to do, need to make sure that you've finished them, and perhaps you're 95% of the way done with something, and it's not necessarily a piece of work out there. It may be 95% done with your mind trying to work something out, and you've almost made it. You've almost made all the connections, but not quite. So just keep going. Make sure everything is done by the time the sun goes into Pisces. And when the sun moves into Pisces, that will then be a time to say, okay, you've got the finished product, and now you have to actually put it into action. But we'll talk about the sun in Pisces early next week. Pisces, the moon is changing sign. It's moving into Libra, and moon moving into Libra, if you're a Pisces, at least on the surface, may not sound great. That's because Pisces and Libra are such different signs. Pisces, it's a water sign, it's mutable. Libra is an air sign, it's cardinal, and so when the moon moves into Libra, you may feel a certain sense of dislocation, that this isn't quite how you understand things, and it just may take you a little bit of time to get used to it all. But I actually think the moon moving into Libra is a good thing for you, because when the moon moves into Libra, it makes a trine to Pluto, and most importantly, it makes a trine to Jupiter. And if you handle the moon trine Jupiter in the right way, I do think that it really can work for you. And the key thing is that you have self-respect and you understand your limitations. And this weekend, it's not a time to be just freely available. Easygoing Pisces is just available for everyone. If someone wants you to do something, you do it. If someone wants you to go somewhere, you'll go there. Easygoing Pisces. But it's not a time to be easygoing in that sense. The moon trine Jupiter requires you to really look after yourself and to understand the importance of your own privacy. In many respects, you don't need other people's help. You don't necessarily need other people's company. There is a serious side to you this weekend, and if you can just focus on the things that matter to you, concentration, maybe study. Study needn't be a study of facts. It can be a study of yourself on an emotional level. Contemplation, that is a way of looking at it. But if you're not disturbed, if people don't interrupt your train of thoughts, then you're absolutely fine, and you can have some very important revelations. Moon trine Jupiter. Jupiter is your ruler. Jupiter is in a strong position. Remember, Mercury has just gone into Pisces. Mercury has just gone into your sign. Mercury is in mutual reception to Jupiter. The gold is right where you are. The gold isn't out there. The gold isn't with someone else. Someone else isn't holding it. You have it all. And so if you've got it all, why put yourself out? And if you allow other people to bother you, then it could be a wasted weekend. And they could bother you. Because, one aspect we do have this weekend is a sesquiquadrate between Mercury and Mars. Mercury is ruler of Virgo, your opposite sign. So Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars could be another person being annoying, another person trying to take up a lot of your time, another person trying to dump their tension and their problems onto you. And that really is not something you need. I mean, you could be distracted if you want to be distracted, but I don't think you want to be distracted. I think you want to just make it your weekend, and concentrate on the things that are important to you, and in that way, it can actually be a great weekend. But there is an element of choice, and what you don't want to do, Pisces, is you don't want to martyr yourself. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now I want to look at the weekend from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I ask the question, what is the weekend going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 46, pushing upward. Now, there are no moving lines. It is locked. So, because there are no moving lines, that might indicate that actually this weekend there is not a great deal going on. It needn't be a dramatic weekend. We can just enjoy the weekend. The moon, we know that astrologically the moon is trine Jupiter this weekend. The moon's in Libra, Jupiter's in Gemini. That's easy. Yeah, sure, there's a Mercury sesquiquadrate Mars, which could be stressful, but maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe it's just moon trine Jupiter. Everything runs smoothly. We can't expect any drama, but do we want any drama? And pushing upward represents solid progress. And whatever we put our mind to, we make progress. It's not dramatic, but we're getting it. We are moving forward, but slowly. And if we look at the nuclear hexagram, this is the hexagram in the hexagram. If we knock off the top and bottom lines, the nuclear hexagram for this is 54, which is the marrying maiden. And so what underlines this weekend is the marrying maiden. The marrying maiden symbolically represents a young woman who is in a hurry to get married. Or we could just see it as symbolic of in a hurry to get something done. So the underlying picture is of being in a hurry. We feel we're in a hurry. That's the backdrop to the weekend. A lot of people are pushing forward. They don't want to wait. But given that backdrop, we get hexagram 46, which is pushing upward, and that is a more gradual hexagram. And so what this is telling us is, yes, there's pressure. There's pressure to make things happen. There's pressure to do things, but we don't have to be in a hurry. We're moving forward. Inevitably we are going to reach our destination. But it takes a little bit of time, and we should not be in a hurry. We should gradually make progress and just be comfortable that we're doing the right thing. And really, it's as simple as that. And now I want to look at American politics. And I wanted to actually start off with going back to the full moon before I look at Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. I want to go back to the full moon. And so we had a full moon on Wednesday, and here's a full moon. I've set the full moon to Washington. And one thing I did notice about this full moon was that Venus was rising. And Venus is the planet of love. It's a planet of relationships. But what if we try to see Venus on a wider global level? And yes, I mean, I have said that Venus could be the planet of victory and can be associated with war, but it has a diplomatic feel to this. And Wednesday was the day in which Donald Trump had his phone call with Vladimir Putin. And, this phone call has had a very dramatic impact. I mean, people in the European Union and NATO seem to be somewhat distraught about it. The idea that Trump is talking to Putin. I'm not, by the way, convinced that this is necessarily what Russia wants. It would, in a way, it would have been much simpler for Russia if Biden had won. It would have been straightforward, because we all know that Biden hated Russia. Democrats wanted Russia to lose. There was no, well, of course, I know everyone in America wants Russia to lose, but the Democrats didn't just want Russia to lose. They wanted Russia to destroy itself. That's what they wanted. But there was no scope for compromise with the Democrats. And yeah, the Democrats, Biden regime or the Harris might push more and more money into the war, but at least it would have been straightforward. It would have just been a battle with an enemy who refuses to compromise. It just would have been easier for Russia to just plug away. But you could say that with Trump, it makes things more complicated. The Russians have to think about the end of the war. In a way, it's kind of more likely that it would have been more likely that Russia would have captured Odessa, for example, with Biden in charge, with Harris in charge, than with Trump. Trump is looking for a deal, and of course, a deal would potentially happen before Ukrainian collapse. So it does actually make things more complicated. So I don't think this necessarily runs in Russia's best interest, despite what the mainstream media is saying. And so here's a full moon, and full moon with that Venus. That really does indicate that Venus, a sense of diplomacy, and maybe the phone call with Putin. But this phone call with Putin seems to have been a real shock for people in the West, like the European Union. People talk about betrayal. And if we want to see the shock, it might be a good idea to look at this chart in terms of some of the hypothetical planets, and particularly one hypothetical planet in particular, which I did highlight when I looked at this full moon. So if we have another look at this chart and we put on the hypothetical, we show up the hypothetical planets, and I talked about Cupido. Cupido is a planet connected with love, relationships, union. So if you look at that in a global sense, you could say that that is what Cupido is about, and it's about diplomacy. And notice how the Sun is exactly semi-square Cupido. But more than that, you see, the Sun is square Uranus, and Uranus is sesquiquadrate Cupido. So Cupido, Uranus, the full moon, because remember this full moon had Uranus on the T, but then Cupido is also influencing that Cupido, the full moon. So the full moon with Uranus, the full moon with Uranus on the T, was indicating a surprise, something quite shocking about it. And with Cupido also being involved, then that gives us some idea about where the shock actually is. It's a shock of diplomacy. It's a shock of Trump making this phone call. And if we look at the 90-degree dial, just we look at the full moon on the 90-degree dial, just a reminder how we see this. We can, if we put the new moon on the new moon, the full moon square Uranus on the pointer, because conjunction squares and oppositions are shown as conjunctions, semi-squares and sesquiquadrates are shown as oppositions. So there it is. You've got the Sun, Moon, Uranus on the pointer, and then right at the other end of the pointer, we have got Cupido. So I thought that was interesting, and I thought that this full moon, given what happened, did I say new moon? I kind of mix up new moons and full moons in terms of what I say. I mean a full moon, by the way. This full moon getting this exact semi-square sesquiquadrate from Cupido may say something about diplomacy, yeah, and it may say something about Trump's phone call with Putin. And going back to this full moon, and just quickly, I should have mentioned. We don't need to crowd ourselves out with hypotheticals. Let's just remove the hypotheticals. So this full moon did actually have an impact on Trump, and it's not immediately obvious. But if we look at Donald Trump's horoscope, and we compare the full moon with Donald Trump and the full moon. So this full moon was at 24/6 Aquarius. So you might be asking, how does that affect Donald Trump? Okay, this full moon was relatively close to his ascendant. By the way, the full moon was actually on Russia's ascendant. If you take, was it January the 25th, 1991, of the raising of a Russian flag, which I mentioned when I was doing a full moon chart. But this full moon is actually hitting Trump's Mercury. But it doesn't seem obvious, does it? See, Trump has his Mercury at 852 Cancer. So this full moon was exactly semi-square sesquiquadrate Trump's Mercury. And this is just a reminder, you must use semi-squares and sesquiquadrates. I must emphasize that. If you take anything from these videos, do use semi-squares and sesquiquadrates. If you don't use semi-squares and sesquiquadrates in your astrological work, you are missing something out. And so this semi-square and sesquiquadrate, this full moon is exactly on Trump's Mercury. Now, you could see that in terms of Trump saying things and which perhaps are regrettable, but it might just be about Mercury. It might be about the communication. It might be about his phone call with Putin. By the way, I just saw that J.D. Vance is kind of backtracking on it a bit. He's now, I think J.D. Vance has said that if Trump doesn't negotiate in good faith, America will send loads of send new supplies to Ukraine. Will even send troops. So Vance is trying to balance what Trump has been indicating. And so, we're not quite sure how this is going to work out. But I think in terms of the full moon and the phone call, I think that seems to me to be quite clear. And the shock that NATO has felt, you might say, is kind of reflected by the Secretary General of NATO. The Secretary General of NATO is Mark Rutte, and Mark Rutte has his son. In fact, Mark Rutte has his birthday. I mean, I'm making this video on Friday, so happy birthday, Mark Rutte. And he is going to be 58 today. Is that right? 58. He's born in 67, so yeah, 58 today. And he's got his son at 25 Aquarius. So this full moon was quite close to the Secretary General of NATO's son. So again, it was a bit of a shock for him, and he's now got Uranus square his sun. So Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, and in a way his chart reflects NATO. So Mark Rutte is probably quite disturbed by that phone call. And now I want to look at Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. With Tulsi Gabbard, we certainly do not have we certainly don't have a time of birth for Tulsi Gabbard, but here is her chart, and this full moon at 24 Leo certainly hit her chart. You can see that Tulsi Gabbard has Venus at 24 Aries, Neptune at 24 Sagittarius. So this new moon sort of completed the grand trine. So it's really hitting her Venus. Now, the thing about Tulsi Gabbard is that it is a very extreme chart. Tulsi Gabbard has, let's see, she's got no planets in Earth signs, unless you count Chiron, which I don't. And she has only got one planet in water signs, and that is a generational planet, Uranus in Scorpio. So she is really complete fire and air. I mean, she's a complete fire air person, completely positive. If you take fire and air as being the positive signs, water and earth as the negative signs. And she's got this incredible build-up in Aries. She's got Sun, Mercury, Mars, Sun, Venus in Aries, and she's got Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. So she was born in 1981, the same year as Meghan. So that Aries, I mean, it's very powerful. She does what she wants, and there is a sense in which that could trip her up. And she's not someone who is going to be pushed around. And one wonders, how is she going to be able to cope with the responsibilities and the pressure of being being intelligence director. I mean, that could be really difficult for her. And it's not just about the responsibilities of a job, it's the pressure. And I'm sure there are lots of people in Washington who want her to fail. And there's going to be a lot of provocation there. I mean, with that Aries, don't forget she was a Democratic congresswoman, but she wasn't really a team player. That's not really how Aries works, is it? She did things her way, and she wasn't just going to follow the party line. She had her own ideas, and just because she has switched to the Republican Party doesn't mean she's changed as a person. And when you look at those Aries planets, what do you think about? You think Saturn. Saturn is going to move into Aries very soon. And so Saturn makes its first entry into Aries in a few months' time, then it goes back into Pisces, but then over the next couple of years, Saturn is going to be making. She's going to have her Saturn opposition Saturn. She's going to have Saturn on her Mercury. She's going to have Saturn on her Mars. She's going to have, she's got an exact Sun-Pluto opposition. So Saturn is going to be hitting that. And, one really wonders, how is she going to deal with it? And how is she going to be able to stay the course? And so given these Saturn transits, which will put her under a lot of pressure, I am not convinced that she's going to still be National Intelligence Director by the time Trump's term of office comes to an end. And so far it looks as if he'll be replaced by Vance, but a lot can change. So that's my thought about Tulsi Gabbard's chart. I'm just not convinced. I think she's possibly too independent-minded, too positive for that kind of job. I mean, I haven't looked at her chart in detail. I'm not saying this is an absolute prediction, and I don't have her time of birth. But that's my first sort of feelings about Tulsi Gabbard's horoscope. Then there is RFK. Now, he has a C Rodden rating. His time of birth is not absolutely confirmed, but there is a time that is being used, that widely used for him, which is 5:32 p.m. And why not? I'll just stick with this 5:32 p.m. Again, no guarantees that this is his right time, but if I don't use a time of birth, I just use a noon chart. There's always people in the comments saying, no, he does, his time of birth is there. But okay, here's his time of birth. Here is a time of birth. But I must just warn you, I'm not 100% confident of this time of birth. So here is RFK's chart. So he has just turned 71. Is that right? So he was born in 1954, so he was 70 in 2024, so he's turned 71. So if you were to use profections, annual profections, you move you move the ascendant sort of one sign per year. Then at his 72nd birthday, because it repeats every 12 years, his profected ascendant would be Leo. So because he's 71, his profected ascendant is the sign before Leo. So his profected ascendant is Cancer. And so on January the 7th, on his birthday, January the 17th, 2025, he moved into that Cancer stage. And it's kind of interesting that he has moon in Cancer. His moon in Cancer is actually conjunct the United States' sun, because the United States has its sun at 13 Cancer. So there is a natural association between RFK and the United States. So it's kind of not surprising that in the end he becomes a cabinet secretary. I think RFK right now, he's the closest that a Kennedy has got to the presidency for a long time, obviously not since 1968, since his father's assassination. I think that RFK is 12th in line to the presidency. So if Trump were to be killed or die, and then 11 people, then 11 various cabinet ministers and cabinet secretary, cabinet members, and others were to drop dead at the same time, if there was, I don't know, some freak catastrophe, then he would be president. So he would need 11 people to drop dead at the same time for him to become president. So he is 12th in line to the presidency. I just thought you'd be interested in that piece of trivia. As health secretary, there is a rule. It just goes through the cabinet members, like the secretary of, I think it goes, I don't know, I forget, president, then you've got the vice president, then you've got the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and then it goes down to the Secretary of State, and then it goes down all that, and then in the end it's health secretary. And so it's nice that he's got moon in Cancer in terms of that perfection when he hits 71. He's also got the South Node in Cancer. So, and he's got Uranus there as well. So the next year, there's always going to be pressure in terms of his reputation and how he deals with that pressure. South Node, I do regard South Node can be about a bad reputation. Of course, this all assumes that we know what time he was born. It assumes that he's got Leo rising, and he was looking at the chart for his swearing in. So here's a chart for his swearing in, and now with health, so he's health secretary. Now again, assuming we know his birth time, he's got quite a lot of stuff in the sixth house. He's got Sun, Mercury, Venus. Sun, Mercury, Venus, the North Node in the sixth house. So for someone who is health secretary, having all those planets in the sixth house, that fits. And it's particularly pleasing that he's got the North Node in the sixth house, that health is what he should be focusing on, and this is the right thing for him to do. By the way, I'm not making any opinion about RFK and his opinions. about, and his, sorry, I'm not making any opinion, I'm not expressing any view about RFK and his beliefs, for example, about vaccines. I'm not a great vaccine skeptic. I've had loads of COVID vaccinations. I quite like having COVID vaccinations, but I don't have a problem with vaccinations myself. But nonetheless, that North Node, his North Node in Capricorn in the sixth house, would indicate being Health Secretary of the United States. Yeah, it is the right thing for him to be doing. And he was sworn in when Pluto was conjunct his descendant. I mean, that's dramatic. That's quite powerful. I mean, you'd think that Pluto on his descendant would be about his enemies, but maybe it is about his enemies. Maybe now that he's Health Secretary, people in Washington are really going to be after him with Pluto in his seventh house. But maybe, alternatively, maybe this is somehow he's overcome his enemies. And look at Chiron. Remember, Chiron is the wounded healer. And some would argue, some would not argue, that RFK is the wounded healer. He has his wounds. He's had his wound as his father being murdered, being assassinated. Also, of course, he's got his own health problems. He's got the issue with his voice, for example. And you could say that he is a wounded healer, and he says he's trying to make America healthy again. What's it, Maha? And so you could give him that role. And his midheaven is 1915 Aries. And Chiron, again, assuming his time is right, this is perhaps evidence that his time is right, he's got Chiron, transiting Chiron over his midheaven as he becomes Health Secretary. And that is incredibly fitting. I think that, you don't really have to say anything about it. That's very clear, very very obvious way in which Chiron is working. And finishing with his solar arc directions. Again, with solar arc directions, we are making an assumption here about his having a time of birth, but his solar arc directed midheaven is at 0 degrees 43 Cancer. So as his solar arc as his midheaven, because if you move his midheaven at 19 degrees 15 Aries, if you move it 70 degrees, approximately 71 degrees, it moves to 0 degrees Cancer. So his midheaven is on the cardinal point, it's on the solstice point. And so the solstice point, because it's square the Aries point, is about the world. It's about one's public life. And so as his midheaven crosses the cardinal point, as it crosses the solstice point, his progressed midheaven, that's when he gets prominence, firstly as someone who is campaigning for the presidency, then as someone who campaigns with Trump, and then finally as a person who becomes Health Secretary in a swearing in and a confirmation process which got a huge amount of attention. And additionally, his solar arc directed Mars has just been on his Sun. So a year ago, he had solar arc directed Mars on his Sun, and that indicates all his arguments and clashes with the Democratic Party and whether or not his name was on the ballot, and his presidential campaign, which is a very contentious campaign. And now his Mars is on his Mercury. Quite an irritating thing. He's really going to have to fight here, and there's a lot of verbal action. There's a lot he's going to say he has to say, but it could put him under a fair amount of pressure. So those are a few thoughts about RFK, and sorry if you're bored of American politics, but I thought in this video I would just have a look at a few things going on over the last week. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description, and I will talk to you again very soon.